All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Parent to Parent. And we're talking about something that's been on the minds of so many parents, and that is gun safety, gun violence, especially in light of what happened last week. Can't believe it's already been a week over in Nashville, Tennessee, where there was an elementary school shooting and several children and teachers died in that shooting. And, unfortunately, this keeps happening. It's like I'm on the news talking about it. I feel like so much more often. And gun violence is on the rise. You look at a lot of reports and studies, and that is the case. And so, what is the solution? I know that we talked with a psychologist and we talked with Dr. Leslie Taylor, and she was talking about how starting at first grade really is the age where parents should be the first ones that come up to their children and start talking to them about what they know, what they are feeling. And it's interesting, a point that really I didn't think about. You would think first grade, that's too young, but they're around older kids, and these older kids know a lot of this information. And so, sometimes you don't know how to process it. Us as adults, but can you imagine even children? They're the ones that are going to school. So I do really highly recommend you go to our website, fox26houston.com, and you can click on the link to see our story there, because she gives some great tips. You all know that I have a kindergartner. I also have a 3-year-old, but 3-year-old doesn't really know what's going on. But the kindergartner knows that sometimes mommy comes home and she's pretty sad. And there's other professions, doctors, nurses, school teachers. And so it's important to let your child know that they are safe. And there's some great tips that she gives. So please do be sure to look at that. Now, today we're talking about something kind of on the same lines, and it's very interesting. We're going to be speaking with a pediatrician who is taking proactive approaches to try to help with the whole firearm injury increasing and death for young children. I mean, it has to stop. Obviously, there needs to be laws out there. Everybody has their own opinion, and I would vouch to say that there are people that are making it very political, and so that really hampers on the children because it's going to affect them at the end. So this is great because I've read some of the articles that have been out there, and I think it's really, really important to listen to doctors, to professionals about what they think needs to happen and what they are doing now to try to come to that solution. So without further ado, here we have Dr. Sandra McKay. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So what motivated you to start on this path of trying to come up with solutions, and not just come up with them, but also help with implementing them?
There were several different motivating factors. I think some of them were involved with having children of my own, and especially after Sandy Hook. I remember when Sandy Hook happened, my middle child was in the same grade, and I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, I mean, this could have been my own kid," and it's one of those things where you really, as a physician and as a parent, you start thinking, what more could I do? What more can I do to help, with this? Because it can't continue to be the cycle of, you know, an event happens, people start saying we need to do more, and then another event happens, and then we have the same thing happen over and over again. I've always done a lot of advocacy work. I work closely with our state American Academy of Pediatrics chapters, and so at one point I said, "That's it. I'm going to start being more active, and I'm going to start raising my voice and working with our state legislatures and working on seeing what policies are in place, understanding those policies, and then start looking at, well, where are some gaps that are feasible and implementable that we can really start making some change, and also start talking with some of the people who are in the field and seeing where are some of the gaps that we can start making some real improvements on."
And what have you found surprising in your quest to do this?
I think some of the early things were that there were a lot of pediatricians who really didn't even feel comfortable about talking about guns in the clinical encounter. I mean, that was one of the early things that I discovered, where people didn't feel comfortable talking about firearms and even talking to families about them. They were worried that they were going to offend parents with having asking the questions. And so, that was an easy thing for us to do, or, we could talk to families and say, it's okay to start talking about firearms, when we're talking about weapons.
Hmm.
It's no different than asking, how does your baby sleep at night? Do you
Right.
use a car seat? Well, we should ask about, how do you store your firearms at home? Because there are a lot of times where we can offer that education and say, it really should be stored locked, because you have a little, a baby who's 6 months today, but you're going to blink and they're going to be 2 years tomorrow, and they could access that firearm. And I know that you think hidden in the top of your closet is safe, but man, kids climb and they
Hmm.
do this stuff, and you're not going to
Hmm.
remember and realize how quick it's going to happen. And accidents and firearm tragedies are real, and they happen to everybody. Then and it's so quick. And our job as physicians is to help raise awareness and to look at where those risks are and try to reduce those risks. And so that was one really early one in my career where I saw an opportunity. And so we developed an educational platform for pediatricians and for
Hmm.
to teach them how to do that counseling in the clinical encounter so that they can feel comfortable and feel confident in how they educate parents.
Definitely. That is so, I mean, that's so eye-opening, because it's like, what do you do? I mean, you could be that line of defense. And, some people may not keep up with the news, but I mean, it is very often that we say a 3-year-old passed away, or was killed, or a 2-year-old killed a 4-year-old. It was accidental, and you think to yourself, this was all preventable. And
Absolutely.
obviously, feel awful for the parents, but the whole situation is awful. And if a pediatrician, which you should be going to on a pretty regular basis, is able to ask that question that they might not even have thought about, then I think that's huge. And my pediatrician, or my child's pediatrician specifically, um, is so honest with us about things. And it's like, when COVID had just started, we were wondering, should we do this, should we do that? And it's like, she just said, we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. We don't. And it's like, you look at it like, oh, you're the pediatrician, you should know everything. What should I do? Where should I? But the honesty is so important. And as we say, for parents to be honest with their children, I think I can tell you, as a parent, a pediatrician being honest like that and asking those questions, you shouldn't be offended by it. You should, you know, embrace it. So anyway, that's very promising that that's happened. And how have parents and pediatricians received that?
It's been phenomenally positive. I think the pediatricians that have gone through our training, and we've been fortunate to train hundreds of physicians in training,
Hmm.
and even experienced physicians who have now changed their clinical practice. And with that, it's been really positive. And parents, firearm owning parents. I mean, and I'm a firearm owner myself, and it's really nice to see the response, because they're like, oh yeah, I forgot, yeah, I do have that up there. It's
Hmm.
not really met with hesitance or any kind of you know um, uh, you know distrust. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, I am a fire owner. Yeah, that's
Right,
right.
right.
Oh, you're right. I do need to store it that way. Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way.
Hmm.
And I think there's just like, if you're not comfortable with a topic, you're going to shy away from talking about it. And so it's
Hmm.
about getting everyone comfortable with making it a normal conversation to have, just like how I would have a normal conversation about how your baby's growing and developing,
Hmm.
and encouraging it to become a part of the normal clinical encounter, because again, it's firearms are the leading cause of death in children, and we have to recognize that because of that, we have a special role and responsibility in raising that awareness. And sometimes it's just as simple as when you're out of your routine and you're a firearm owner and you go to the range, and you come home and you put your bag down, and you're out of your routine because you get rushed to do something and you forget to put it back in your safe. I mean, you really do have to recognize that you're putting your family at risk at that point, and walking through all those routines. And and we want to prevent these tragedies, and especially when you're looking at things around the realm of like suicide prevention. And
Hmm.
you might have a teenager in the home who's struggling, and now you have to start thinking about, okay, now how do I store my firearms? Are they
Hmm.
appropriate in this setting now? And those are the other conversations that we train people to have. Is it appropriate to have the firearms even in the home because my teenager knows the combination to the safe? Do I
Uh-huh.
need to start thinking about changing that combination, or is it time to maybe have, my in-laws or a friend to hold these firearms for a period of time while my child's struggling? I mean, these are other conversations that we have with parents and we train people to have so that people can feel comfortable and confident, because we want to have everyone in the home feel safe and everyone to feel comfortable at home.
Definitely. I was going to ask this because I'm kind of like, as a parent, torn, and I lean more towards, okay, so I'll just tell you because maybe other parents have the same thing. So, my son, he's into the Avengers and Star Wars and guns and like, so he like points a gun at me and is like, oh, boom, boom, or whatever. And I'm like, well, this is kind of disturbing. Like, I get it's part of playing, but kind of at what, even those little figurines that you get with the AR-15s and stuff. I mean, I'm looking at it obviously as an adult perspective, not a fun kind of thing. But do you think that has any type of, not correlation, but is negatively impacting the child?
So, in my experience, kids will like chew a sandwich into a firearm shape, pew pew, and
Yeah,
that's just like, and that's kind of what they do. And
right.
I don't think, and it's about having those conversations with your child too,
Hmm.
and understanding and recognizing that, like, this is something that will hurt someone. Oh, do you want to really hurt mommy?
Right.
And having those types of conversations. Are you playing? Is this like playtime? And saying, obviously lightsabers are fake, and like we
Right.
don't ever lightsabers.
Right.
But when they like, oh, did you really want to hurt me? Oh, that hurt. Ow, and
Yeah.
so there are ways to make it play and fun,
Right.
and and I have quite the Nerf gun arsenal in our family, and we make it
Yes.
a lot of fun for my boys, and that's the way that they've grown up. But
Right.
also they know that firearms are dangerous. They can cause a
Hmm.
lot of serious harm, and they know that if you see a gun, you don't touch it. You make sure an adult is around, and you let an adult know that that's there.
Hmm.
And so it's about having those open conversations with your kids and recognizing that what's on TV is different than what's in real life.
Right. Right. Do you what are some other things that you're working on? I know that there's this article which I recommend everybody to read. It's with Rice University's Baker Institute. So you are part of one of the authors of this, and one of the things that kind of struck me was really one of the first lines, I think. It's in the US, there were nearly 700 mass shootings in 2021 alone, 42 of which were school related. 2021. I mean, some could say the pandemic was over, pandemic's still there. Like, we're in, like, we're not even fully back in school, and this is happening. What kind of takeaway do you have from this article? Because it's very insightful on what's happening and what you all are trying to do.
So, one of my roles that I have is I'm the Huffington Fellow with the Baker Institute for Public Policy. And so one of the things that we look at is that we look at some complex problems and look for some feasible solutions to them.
Hmm.
And what we wanted to do with fire violence in particular, and with this was, addressing the firearm epidemic is multi-layered. There are multiple different approaches to take. And one of the areas that we looked at were these mass shootings, and looked at the ages of the mass shooters and saw that, they are, especially for ones um, in the deadliest mass shooters, a lot of them were young people,
Hmm.
typically, under that, like 21 age range. And there's a lot of different layers, a lot of things to unpack there. But what can we do to help impact that, right? And certainly when you purchase firearms, you have to be 21 to purchase a handgun. That's federal law. But most states, you can be 18 to purchase a long gun. And so a long gun is anything that's like essentially not a handgun, right? So that is
Hmm.
like your shotguns and your rifles. And so what we were looking at is what are the structures that are in place that could help us in the state, or even anywhere really, look at reducing those risks. And this is all taking like what we call like a risk mitigation approach. What can we do to reduce risk to children, to people who are at risk for firearm injury? And one of those things that we looked at were, when you look at people who have gone through safety training, especially in Texas with like hunter safety training, those that have gone through that safety training, their risk for having firearm injury, are significantly low. So one of the proposals that we had looked at were, well, we have this population of folks who seem to be involved with more mass shootings. They're this younger age demographic, right? What about requiring them to go through an additional layer of training of safety?
Hmm.
Because obviously we know that a teenage population is young, their
Hmm.
brains are still growing, their brains are still developing. We know that they might need a little bit extra training or safety education to go through this. And so that was one of our proposals through here, is just when you look at the data, you look at the science, it is something that medical associations agree and get on board with, is that especially the young population, they would need more training, more education, more supervision, essentially. And going through a standardized type training program would be beneficial for them.
So if a person gets, if they have the, their goal is to kill and they go through this training, I mean, is the idea that this would maybe cause red flags that people can see at that point, or what is the sort of trajectory there?
So, I think it's going to be hard to see if a program like this would be able to identify folks from
Okay.
this, right? And that's really where the science and education would have to come through, right?
Hmm.
But the idea would be is, a program or something like this would help to mitigate some of that risk. So someone who might be potentially struggling, going through a program like this would help to either identify them a little bit sooner, or even someone who is struggling would be able to be picked up by people who are selling them firearms, because they would say, oh, well, you haven't done this, you haven't done
Hmm.
this. Because anytime that you have to add additional requirements, that's a layer that they would have to jump
Right,
through,
right.
like a barrier that they would have to achieve and go through. And that
Hmm.
might be enough of a delay to slow someone down, or even prevent them from being able to achieve their what their internal desire was. They're like, this is my goal. Well, now I have to go through a hunter safety training course, and I'll have to do this. It's going to slow them down. That might be enough of a deterrent to stop them from being able to do that as well, especially
Hmm.
for someone who is under the age of 21, who might be more impulsive or more driven that way.
Yeah.
So but obviously, we'd have to see if this were something like this to be implemented. We'd have to study it and investigate it and see what the results of it were to be. So we're really just looking at, in a program like this. This is where the background is. This is a policy proposal that we would have, and then
Hmm.
implementing something like that. We would love to see what was the impact of it, and how did that impact this in our population.
And one thing that is just a constant with all of these killers, convicted killers, I mean shooters, whatever, is that they have severe mental health issues. And it almost seems like the gun safety and gun issue goes hand in hand with mental health. Do you feel that there is a solution when it comes to mental health, just because we lack so much help because there's so much of a need? So, there's obviously a deeper rooted issue. I mean, the most recent one was a transgender uh, woman. And, you know, I don't know what the mental health situation was there, but it almost seems like that is always the catalyst for something horrific like this to happen.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, I do want to be clear that, like, just because you have mental illness doesn't mean that you are
Right,
going to
right.
be
Oh, right,
something
right. Yes, yes.
because, like,
No, no,
people
no.
struggle with
We
mental
all have
illness.
something.
Yeah.
We're all depression, anxiety, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. So that's not, it's just that there's, they could benefit from some
Oh,
type of help.
absolutely. And especially in regards specifically to schools, even,
Hmm.
we do have, and it came out of the Santa Fe shootings, this program called School Behavioral Threat Assessments
Hmm.
in the state of Texas. And so, and it's really just been started in the last year or two, where they go through and look at students who have risks, who look like they're at risk for mental illness and things like repeated truancies, repeated referrals to their principals, repeated behavioral referrals, and for behaviors that might be concerning for like might not be able to succeed at school, might not be able to
Mhm.
graduate, or might be referred frequently for like police events. And
Right.
those are kids that they're trying to say, well, these are kids that seem to be at risk, and we want to get them referred early to mental health services. And also the state of Texas has invested millions and millions of dollars in the last few years
Mhm.
for networks such as the Child Psychiatry Access Network. Because what we do know with children is that they do have a lot of mental health needs, and we also know that there's not enough child psychiatrists out there, and there's not. And so folks like me in general pediatrics, we're scrambling at trying to learn more child psychiatry and become child psychiatrists essentially, and we just don't have the training for it. So there's this network in Texas called the Child Psychiatry Access Network, where I can pick up the phone and within 20 minutes have a child psychiatrist available to me who can guide
Wow.
me how to manage, an acute case in front of me. So I can say, I don't know what I'm doing. I really, really, really need your help. Can you please help me? And they will say, this is exactly what you're seeing. This is what I would recommend. We can get you started, get your patient referred in for therapy. I would recommend, starting this medication. We can get you referred into a psychiatrist, because there's simply just not enough psychiatrists. And that's
Mhm.
just the problem with like the workforce. I mean, it takes years to train a psychiatrist. You've got to do
Right.
residency training, medical school training. There's just not enough time to train psychiatrists. And so this network that we have in the state of Texas is so incredible, because now you can take that access and give it to any pediatrician and any
Wow.
trainee. And now I can sit here and feel comfortable and confident because I know I'm a phone call away from a psychiatrist who can help me and guide me. And so that way I can get the right care to my patient at the right time, instead of saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to refer you to a psychiatrist. It'll be 6 months. And I hope,
Wow. Yeah. And
it'll
what
be
is it called
tomorrow.
again?
So it's called the Child Psychiatry Access Network. The abbreviation for it is CPAN, and it's incredible. We're very blessed. So, and
That's
the state
great.
of Texas has invested a lot of millions and millions of dollars to make this a network that is viable, that is active,
Mhm.
and physicians, we enjoy using it. I enjoy using it personally, and it's transformative for patient care.
Definitely. Yeah, I'd love to look in that more to let people know about that, because I know they may feel, okay, I'm going to my pediatrician. Now she's going to refer me, and that's going to take another whatever. And it's kind of like you have this tool to help you with all of that. Well, thank you. I feel like I could talk to you forever. Thank you so much for speaking with us. It's such a huge topic, and I hope you do speak to us again, just because I know that there's so much in the works and so much needs to be done. So, yeah, thank you again.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for
All
having me.
right. Yes. Well, thank you all for joining us on this edition of Parent to Parent. Almost forgot what the segment is called. Please do comment on the Facebook, YouTube, website to let us know if you have any questions, and we will see you next week.